So in the early church, they didn't actually celebrate Christmas. What we think of as Christmas was celebrated on Epiphany, January 6th. And Epiphany rolled up three different things into it. It was the birth of Jesus, it was the coming of the Magi, and then it was the baptism of Jesus. And all three things happened together. And over time, as we became more aware of history and chronology, we went ahead and split those things up so that we celebrate the birth at Christmas, generally at 12 days, or since we use the Sunday, 2 weeks later, we do the coming of the wise men, still calling it Epiphany. And next week, we will observe baptism of the Lord. And not only will we remember Jesus' baptism, we're going to have an actual baptism. Terry and Johan, Jana Krieg's grandson, Annie, and Tony's little boy Levi is going to be baptized. And then we will all renew our own baptisms at the same time. We'll be all wet together. It'll be great. Epiphany means appearance or manifestation or revelation. And today we call Epiphany, and therefore ask ourselves, what is it that is revealed to us in this story about the wise men coming? Well, there are multiple things that are revealed. I think maybe one of the most obvious is that Herod is a fraud. You'll notice that all my revelations start with F. It just turned out that way. So I don't know if that'll help you remember anything or not, but Herod is a fraud. He's not really faithful. He's just in it for the power. He doesn't know where the Messiah is to come from. He has to ask the prophets in his court. And it's one thing to not know something. It's another thing to not have ever cared about it, right? There are lots of things that we're ignorant about, but it's one thing to not know, and it's another thing to just be willfully ignorant. I don't want to know. Herod was willfully ignorant about the Messiah and the prophecies. He hadn't cared where Messiah was to come from until it looked like maybe there was a Messiah coming and he felt threatened by it. Instead of feeling excited for his people, the Messiah would mean deliverance. Woohoo! Instead of feeling excited, he was concerned with his own power rather than the well-being of his own people. And in fact, as the story will later go on, when he finds out when the star first appeared and where the Messiah is, he orders for all children in and around Bethlehem, 2 years old or younger, to be slain. He sacrifices innocent children to hang on to his own power. Imagine the level of insecurity. I mean, it's a baby, right? He's got at least 15, 20 years before he has to worry about the kid, but no. Herod is revealed as a fraud. The people of Jerusalem, I don't know if you noticed as I was reading that I kind of lingered there a little bit. The people of Jerusalem were revealed to be fearful. They would rather endure the perfidy and the persecution of Herod than allow anything to disturb the status quo. Law and order, peace at the edge of a Roman sword. And perhaps they feared that because the Messiah would be an advocate for the poor, that reordering society to help the poor would cost them some of their own economic well-being. I'm reading a book right now that's very interesting, Democracy Awakening. It's a Heather Cox Richardson book. But the thing that struck me that sort of relates to this out of the book was she talked about the difference between the overt racism right after the Civil War that was in the South and the sneaky but just as insidious racism in the North. That racism in the North came about because it was intertwined with class. Because the well-to-do folks in the North were fearful that if the freed slaves began to vote in ways that created a social safety net and provided opportunity for them, that it was going to cost them. And so their racism was interspersed with classism. The people of Jerusalem were fearful. They would rather accept Herod than what chaos might come from their own Messiah. The prophets in Herod's court were revealed as, this had to stretch to make F work. They were revealed as flunkies. And it works. They were Herod's flunkies. They knew the truth. They were familiar with the words of Scripture backwards and forwards. They were able to tell Herod right away that the Messiah was to be born in Bethlehem. They found the right spot in the scroll of Micah. Remember, they didn't have chapters and verses to look up stuff by. They just had to fish through the whole thing. They knew right where it was. And yet they continued to work for Herod, more concerned with holding on to their own power and privilege than challenging him. Maybe they thought they could keep an eye on Herod, rein in his worst tendencies, his most maniacal impulses. But where were they when Herod had every child in Bethlehem 2 years old or younger slain? These prophets represented perhaps the greatest failure of character in the whole story, the highest level of hypocrisy. They were well versed in what was right, but daily rehearsed what was wrong. Those are the bad F's. Now there are some good things that were revealed in the story too. The wise men. The wise men were revealed to be faithful. Faithful to follow a star. Faithful to seeking the truth even when it took them outside their own country, their own culture, their own comfort zone, their own conceptions. They were open to real authority, able to see right through Herod, able to perceive in a poor and seemingly powerless child that here was a real king. They were open to receiving a divine dream. They were willing to respond to it and not go back to Herod, but return home another way. I actually stumbled across a cool song that I almost thought about using today, but it seemed like it was just going to add minutes, and we were having communion, and it didn't really make an extra point to the sermon. It was just cool. So I will send you to it yourselves. I had never heard the James Taylor song, Home by Another Way. Are there some of you that are familiar with it? He has a whole song about the wise men. Home by Another Way. Look it up on YouTube when you get home. It's clever. It's well done. The wise men were revealed to be faithful. Now, as the story continues, the wise men were not the only ones to receive a divine dream. Joseph receives a dream as well, as he does in Matthew's gospel, that Herod is coming for him and he better get out of Dodge. Well, Bethlehem, Dodge. You get the drift. When it became clear that this was the case, Joseph was revealed to be fearless. When it was clear that Jesus was in danger, that his family was in danger, that the promise was in danger, he left not only the familiarity of his hometown in Bethlehem, but of his country. He fled to Egypt. Egypt of all places. Egypt, the former enslaver of Israel, right? Egypt, the often invading, always interfering, ever intimidating superpower to the south of Israel. Egypt. He flees to Egypt. And tradition has it that the Holy Family spent 3 years there, finding refuge and shelter. I'm anxious to see Roger and Barb Schultz's pictures from their trip to Egypt, They talked about that there are a lot of Coptic Orthodox sites in Egypt of where traditionally the Holy Family is said to have stayed while they were there. There's a whole kind of pilgrimage that you can do along the Holy Family Trail. Pretty awesome. Joseph was revealed to be fearless. And God was revealed, we already knew it, but now we really know it, as Father. A Father whose influence in the world came not through coercion, but care. Not through wealth or weapons, but wisdom. A Father who worked not through duplicitous insiders like the prophets in Herod's court, but through inquisitive outsiders like the wise men from another land. A Father whose protection came unexpectedly through loving neighbors in an enemy nation. A Father whose children he charged with caring for one another and carrying forward his promise. 3 bad F's and 3 good F's. Can learn from all of the above. Epiphany, as well as meaning appearance and manifestation and revelation, is often symbolically about light. So we got a little extra light. We brought out the Easter candle, the Paschal candle, as well as the Christ candle on the Advent wreath. We keep, even though we're coming to the tail end of Christmas, we keep the Christmas tree lights on, the nativity scene lights on. In other years, I've been known to go overboard and just throw candles everywhere, but you get the picture. Epiphany is about light. The light of the star, the light of truth, the light that enlightens everyone, the light of Christ, the light of the world. Light's a funny thing. For those trying to avoid the light makes them run and scatter. For those accustomed to darkness, the light blinds them, making them either grope around in timidity or lash out in panic. But for the wise, light shows a path forward. And for those who are truly seeking, trying to find their way, light brings great joy. As the scripture said, when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. Or for those of us that still have King James stuck in our heads, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Who will we be? And how will we respond to the light?